You've got loads of ideas in here, but you can't bring them to life. Sound familiar? So in the next 15 minutes I'm going to use every tool available to me to create a completely unique fancy village. Because people like you and me have loads of great ideas in our heads, but that's usually where they stay. Forever. And that's where this one would have stayed too, if I hadn't met Christopher.
Hello.
He runs Town Builder, software that creates unique wargaming terrain. This video's kind of all his fault, especially if you don't like it. If you don't like it, blame him.
Hey, wait!
We'll come back to him. So after chatting to Christopher, I knew I had the perfect chance to build the gaming board I always wanted to. But he's such a great guy, I had to deliver. Oh, and did I mention there's only a week till the video's released, so I don't even know if this is possible. Initially, I thought about handcrafting some terrain. But then, as you'll know if you watch my recent videos, I thought I've got loads of cool tools in my garage. Why not use those? I found templates to use to make wooden buildings on my laser, and using Christopher's amazing software I was able to render up some incredible 3D printable files, which I can then crank out on the Uniformation GK2, which is a brand new 8K printer, which Uniformation sent me. More about that later. Once it's all made, I'm going to crack out the paints, and we're going to make it look wicked. Before I get there though, I've got a bigger problem. In Town Builder there are so many options for different types of worlds I'm going to make, so I had to nail it down. Luckily though, that's where this week's video sponsor comes in. Regular viewers will know that Voxel Dance Tango and FND are launching a range of historical Chinese miniatures set in the Ming and Qing dynasties. Town Builder has a feudal Chinese option, and this all just feels a little bit perfect. Just like that, we've got a setting for our village. Feudal China. If I'm starting a project from scratch, and I don't really know where it's going, I like to start with reference images. Looking at these pictures shows the sort of vibe I'm going for. Buildings that are wide rather than tall, swooping roofs, and often one big centerpiece building. Colour-wise, they generally have some sort of red lacquered wood, textured white walls, with green, gold, blue tiled roofs. But to bring this town to life, I'm going to need to use every tool at my disposal, and a fair bit of material too. Flash forward to future James. I didn't realise quite how much. I ended up using 4 pieces of specialist software: Tango, Lightburn, UV Tools, and Townsmith software, my Uniformation GK2 3D printer, 3 litres of resin, 7 sheets of MDF, which I cut on my Algolaser 22 laser watt cutter, lots of glue, even more paint, and several points my will to live. But like all great tales, this one starts at the beginning. So I jumped into Town Builder, an online platform with a one-time lifetime license that allows you to create fantasy terrain in thousands of different forms. Townsmith haven't paid me to make this video, but they did give me access to the platform to show off how cool it is. And Christopher told me it was simple.
Yeah, it's super simple.
He was right. My 8-year-old made one of these buildings. Can you tell which one? Once you've made all the buildings that you want, you click on the button and it renders the textures out automatically. We then do the same for our roof. Just drag it over like so, and wow, this looks amazing. And it's going to fit the theme really nicely. But let's just take a look around anyway. So on screen, the buildings look perfect. But we have a slight problem in that this terrain is designed to print out without supports on an FDM printer, and I don't have one. So I have no idea how this is going to work in resin. This could go badly. Well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So even though I'm using the Town Builder, which is their fancy version, while I was chatting to Christopher, he also told me about that 40k version, Battle Builder, which has an even easier system for building terrain and can support multicoloured 3D printing. I don't know what I'm talking for though. He is so much better at this than me.
Build in an abstract path, like this, and then you can expand it by clicking on it. You can change the height at which you're building. Just like that, you can easily drag out a shape, and by hitting the little check mark down here, you can then create the ruin.
So once we've made the village that we want to, we just need to export the files and drop them into a slicer. Lychee, Chitubox, or in this case, Tango 4.0. And voila! By way of an example, this one's made in Battle Builder and it's printed in resin with 0 supports. It printed first time like a dream. The feudal stuff though was a little bit more complicated. Last month, the team at Uniformation sent me a GK2 8K resin printer, and in return, I said I would make some videos about it. This is one of those, and boy did it arrive just in the nick of time, because I live in the UK and we have just had a massive temperature drop. with temperatures dropping as low as -5. The cool thing about this printer though is, not only is it massive, its base plate is 5 by 9 by 9.5 inches, which is more than double the size of my previous printer. Sorry little guy. And big enough for some of the buildings to be printed in one piece. The GK2 has a very specialist trick up its sleeve, a heated vat, as standard. OMG, yes. Simply fire it up, set the temperature, and it will preheat to 25 degrees. This is amazing. Previously I've always had to jerry-rig some sort of weird insulation setup, or wrap some sort of vat heater around the reservoir. No longer. Honestly, this thing works incredibly. Even at -5 it was able to consistently print. Legend. But it's not plain sailing just yet. Despite the massive size of that build plate, some of these parts are still too big. And so we turn to our second piece of software. Because lots of the more advanced things I achieved in this video wouldn't have been possible without this week's sponsors, VoxelDance, and their incredible slicing software, Tango 4.0. Because I've now got access to more advanced features into 3D printing software, I can share them with you guys. So I'm going to run a little series of tutorials. This is the first one, Boolean. Boolean's nice and simple. It's the thing that you use when you want to cut up or join together models inside 3D printing slicing software. Let me show you. If you want to merge them together, simply line them up, select the Boolean button, click Merge Parts, voila, now they're one part. Also works in reverse. If you've got a part that's too big for your 3D printer, you need to break it up into lots of different bits and pieces. Select your part, click Boolean, click Shells to Parts, and it breaks up into lots of different little bits and pieces. You can then select the pieces you want, merge them back together, and then you can got several pieces that now fit nice and neatly on your printer. I said at the top of the video that they were actually the inspiration for this whole video because they've got an incredible Kickstarter reproducing some historical Chinese Ming and Qing dynasty warriors. And that's what gave me the idea for this whole setting. Now I know this is paid software, but don't forget, that just means no ads. All the links are down in the description below, and I just want to say a huge thank you once again to VoxelDance for sponsoring this video. If you watched that all the way through to the end, thank you very much. At the end of the day, that's what pays the bills. To say thank you properly though, I've popped a free gift for you at the end of the video. Cheers. All I have to do now is export the slice files to the printer. Except, wait, Tango doesn't export directly to .ctb files, which is what my new GK2 uses. So now I needed a bit of Google foo, and while I was doing that, I remembered a story Christopher told me.
And we first did a Kickstarter in December of 2019, and it failed miserably. It was god-awful. We had 5,000 euros as our goal, and I think we raised 1,600 or something like that. So we completely restructured our business model, and we reskinned Town Builder to be more of a software tool and not a product pack. And then 3 months after the first Kickstarter, we launched our second Kickstarter and we raised 300,000 euros, and it was pretty insane.
So, if or when you hit a roadblock in your projects, don't give up. Take a minute, come back, and there's probably a solution out there. My solution? UV tools. I'm not going to explain this here, this video is already way too long, but if you want to ask about it, jump over to my Discord, the link's down below. But for now, problem solved. Oof, check this out. Flip up the hinge lid, lift the beautifully engineered plate catch, no more sticky screws for me.
That's what she said.
And take a minute just to marvel at the solid metal construction. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a print. Time to get this bad boy off the printer. Flip the plate over, and there's a drip catcher. No more spilled resin. I can see why Faux Hammer and Ground Affected both think this is a banging 3D printer. I'd already dialed in the settings, so I knew the adhesion was good, but this never stops being satisfying. For this project I used a number of resins, some Anycubic water washable that I needed to use up, some Wargamer, which is my absolute favourite but is way too expensive for projects like this, and some Sunly resin. Now the GK2 is pretty speedy, but these prints still took their sweet time. In all, I spent about 52 hours continuously printing, not counting the failures, which were my fault, and of which there were 2. With the 3D printer in use, it's time to turn to my laser. This is the Algolaser Alpha 22 watt. To use it though, I need specialist software number 3, Lightburn. From here, it's just a case of dragging the shapes to fit onto the cutting deck, most efficiently and set it going. And 4 hours later, we have the parts for 2 buildings. And this feels like a good time for a montage. And there we have it. I was hoping for a fuller townscape, but then again, I'm often wildly optimistic, and I actually still need to paint all this stuff before I run out of time completely. It's been a while since I've looked at those references though. Green roofs, cream walls, redwood, little golden accents. Oh wait, and the temple has a blue roof. Got it. This is gonna take a lot of paint. Luckily though, I bought a cheap Chinese airbrush last month, and the cap is huge. Time to get priming. Despite that huge cap though, it still took 4 full caps of paint to cover everything properly. Wow. I'm going to need to buy some more. At a couple of points, despite using new airbrush paints from scale 75, drop and paint range, the airbrush did clog a little bit, but we persevered and we made it through. And honestly, if you're looking for a cheap airbrush under 40 quid, I cannot recommend this thing highly enough. It's genuinely very good. But sadly, we're going to have to put the airbrush down and move over to a paintbrush. I did actually toss up whether masking everything out and carrying on with the airbrush would be easier, but I voted no, over to the brush. There's nothing fancy here. In fact, these brushes were the Sable ones I grabbed in my Temu video. They worked really well and cost less than $1 each. Just saying. But by this point, I was pretty tired and my brush skills were somewhat lacking, so need to be a lot of cleanup here. If you're wondering what colours I used here, for the cream I used Heavy Body Titanium Buff by Golden, and I just stippled it on to give some texture with a makeup brush. It's a bit rough, but to be perfectly honest, I can come back and tidy up, and I'm really pleased with the texture. For the red, it's a mixture of gold and high flow, and Citadel Flesh Tearers contrast paints to get the colour that I wanted. It doesn't quite have that gloss finish that I want, so I may come back with something like Tamiya Clear Coat over the top too. I'm not sure. Problem for future James. So it's time to wrap this video up with the final shots. But before I do that, I just want to say thank you to everyone who either joins in on my Discord server or is a patron of mine. My Patreon costs about £3 a month, and that's about the cost of a cup of coffee in the UK. So if you want to buy me a coffee, you can find the links down below. Massive thanks also to Voxel Dance for sponsoring this video. You can find links to their Kickstarter below, and of course, if you're in the market, and you should be, for an incredible laser or a 3D printer, those links are down there, along with all the other bits I used too. And lastly, was Christopher happy? Well, I actually don't know yet, but he is going to watch this video, so check out the comments down below, and if he comments, I'll pin it, regardless of what he says. And if you want to check out the amazing Battle Builder software, and their incredible Kickstarter, which is live now, it's linked in the usual place. And don't you think I forgot? As a thank you for hanging around this long, Tango are giving away 5 free 3-month trials to their incredible software. Simply follow the link below and the first 5 people get the prize. Thank you for sticking this one out. I love making these videos for you all and I am really grateful. Keep safe, and I'll see you next time.